So let's look at the path to victory tonight in the Electoral College for Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Joe Biden. Right now, this is what we've got that feels safe. All of these should not be that closely contested. You can maybe make an argument about one or two being in the high single digits, but ultimately these states should be in the bag for all candidates. Maybe a Republican would argue about Minnesota or a Democrat about Alaska or something along those lines. But this should be the base of what we see going into tonight. So let's discuss some paths to victory. For Joe Biden, coming in with 226 electoral votes that feel safe, 125 for President Donald Trump. You can do the math. 270 is a lot closer to 226 than it is to 125. So the paths for Joe Biden, they are many ways. So let's go with some of the more easy to believe ones. Let's start with Nevada. Been counting the votes here. There really is, it's going to be close, it's going to be a couple points, but a lot of early voting, and that's going to be a theme you hear all night. Lots of early voting. We're nearing 100 million early votes on an election that had roughly 140 million votes in 2016. So turnout should be up. That's going to be a theme. In Nevada, their early voting numbers are skyrocketed. They're incredibly high as we come into today. And so Nevada, with a firewall, Nevada's in a fascinating state because two counties essentially elect the president. Clark County, which is Las Vegas, and then up in Washoe County in the northwestern part of the state, make up well over half the votes in that state. And so Clark County, it's always won by a Democrat, but by how much? Joe Biden has about an 80,000 vote lead in early voting there, just Democrats and Republicans registered there. So no reason to think that Donald Trump will be able to come back in Nevada. So there's one. We'll talk about in the Senate. Arizona, really not a big fan of Donald Trump. John McCain Republicans in the state, not in the good graces of President Trump. So Arizona feels like it'd be a pretty plausible one for Joe Biden. And then just to click around here, I mean, you're at 243, so you just did this. That's 270. And, you know, some might care about the margins tonight, but really all that matters is getting to 270 votes. So you can see winning those western states, winning Florida, that would do it for Joe Biden. Let's go back to the preset. So let's look at maybe an East Coast scenario. Joe Biden's from Pennsylvania. He talks about it often. Donald Trump says, well, he's going to get away from fracking. It's going to take your jobs. But polls have been pretty good for Joe Biden still in Pennsylvania. So let's give him Pennsylvania. I talk about how North Carolina has got a Democratic governor that is very popular, a Republican senator that's in big trouble. So it would not be irrational to think that that will lead to the top of the ticket going blue as well for Joe Biden. And then really you can pick your poison of any of these states that Donald Trump carried in 2016. You can go Wisconsin, get some blue. You can go Michigan, blue. Or if you wanted to go back out west to our friends in Arizona, that could be blue. Really a lot of scenarios there. Or a little bit of a crazy one here. You go blue with Nevada, and then you could flip Nebraska to their second district to 268, the second district in Maine 269. You could have a tie. I could fill it up all red to show you that could be a tie at that point. But there is a tie or two scenario in here, but once again, ties, not likely. So let's reset this again. And really, I could go through a lot of scenarios here for Joe Biden back in the 226. Democrats would love this if Texas turned blue. Now, Democrats are making inroads in Texas. Texas has been a lot closer in recent years. Beto O'Rourke gave Ted Cruz a run for his money in the Senate race a couple of years ago. Obviously, if Texas flips to Joe Biden, I mean, you could probably fill the majority of these in a certain way and really run up the numbers for Joe Biden this election cycle. Let's look at Republican scenarios. Let's look at Donald Trump scenarios because these are the ones that are a little harder to come by. I will say this. I'll fill in a couple that I do feel good about. At the end of the day, I do feel good that Texas will stay Donald Trump. He's still polled in the majority of polls 2 to 3 to 4 points ahead. Republicans have actually outnumbered Democrats in early voting, which is rare across the country. And if you're really flipping 2 or 3 percentage points in Texas, that's tens of thousands, if not 100,000 plus votes just to sway a couple points. That's how many people are in Texas. And are you really saying that you're going to be able to flip over 100,000 votes off of what the polls are saying? Really a couple 100,000 votes if you really start to go into it. And so that's a lot of votes to overturn. I still feel confident Donald Trump wins the state of Texas. Another state that, oddly enough, it's contested every year, but that Republicans will feel better about than the rest of these is actually Ohio. Ohio, we know the historical fact that Republicans need to win Ohio to win the presidency, that no Republicans ever lost Ohio and won the presidency. I could promise you if they lost Ohio again that they would not win the presidency again. But Ohio, once again, you can find a poll or two where Joe Biden is up a point or two, but most of them have been pretty solid Trump, 3 to 5 points, which is a lot better than most swing states, especially this year for Donald Trump. And so Ohio, once again, Ohio would signal that it was almost a landslide if it were to flip to Joe Biden. It was actually about a 9-point victory for Trump in 2016. So Ohio feels like a good bet for Trump. So let's get into how all these would need to go. Obviously, with the big 29 electoral vote pool in Florida, Donald Trump has to win Florida. Like I said, I don't feel good about Nevada. I think that's a Joe Biden victory, or Republicans should not feel good about Donald Trump's chances in Nevada. Arizona, with its 11 electoral votes, talked about that Mark Kelly is probably going to unseat Republican incumbent Martha McSally at the U.S. Senate. I think that's going to go at the top of the ticket as well. So those two states feel pretty good for Joe Biden no matter what. So what Donald Trump's going to have to do is going to have to hold on to a very contested Georgia, close Senate races, a governor that's not necessarily popular in Brian Kemp. That state's going to be important for Trump. It's been reliably Republican, but swinging more towards the middle. Trump needs to carry that. Now, would you look at what's remaining? Iowa, close at the Senate level, probably going to be a 3 to 4 point race. Traditionally, the polls always have it closer than it ends up, and the Republican usually wins by a few points. Barack Obama, I believe, did win the state in one of his elections, but Iowa still feels like it's going to be in Trump's favor, so that's not a far-fetched. But what really gets tough here is Michigan and Pennsylvania, because these are states that he won in 2016. Michigan, there are some polls that have him down 10 in Michigan. And look, the margin of error, the polls got it wrong in 2016, to be quite frank. 90% of them got it flat wrong. There were very few polls that had him winning in Michigan and Pennsylvania. But they had Clinton by 3, 4, 5 points, not 8, 9, 10 points, the way some of these Michigan polls have. This is a big ask to win the state of Michigan. This is a big ask to win the state of Pennsylvania. It's 5 to 7 points in a lot of polls. There's a recent poll or two that have it tied or 1 point either way. But when you consider all the early voting and you consider the thought process, that is, Republicans have always felt, and a lot of people really feel, when turnout is high, Democrats win. When turnout is low, Republicans win. And there's really no indication in this election that we have a low turnout. We're nearing 100 million votes just early out of an electorate that only had 140 million votes total in 2016. Are you really going to say that less than 40 million are going to show up to the polls today? I really don't see that. I think it's going to be a very high turnout election. So you're going to see in all these close races. And another thing to remember is that in a lot of these swing states, while Republicans have made inroads in voter registration, they have had more Republicans registered this year than Democrats have in states like Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. There are still more registered Democrats in these states. That's kind of where the thought process comes from, that if turnout is high, Democrats win, because there are more registered Democrats in a lot of these states. There's no indications that independents are in love with Donald Trump. You could say they'll split, but I don't think you can say they're going to go 60-40 or 65-35 towards Trump. So he has a lot of problems here trying to pull Michigan and Pennsylvania. Florida's believable. Obviously, Texas and Georgia, they're all believable. Iowa's believable. But these are where it gets tricky up here: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And in this scenario, he carries Michigan, he carries Pennsylvania. He could have the 2nd district in Nebraska and Maine get to his 270. He could split one of those and be 269, 269 and have the tie. So under this scenario where he takes the Rust Belt here, he could get the presidency pretty easily, even without a state like North Carolina, without winning Arizona and Nevada out west. Let's look at one more scenario here and to go back blank on some of these. So once again, there's a couple obvious ones. I've left Ohio red. He's got to win Ohio. He's got to win Florida. All scenarios stop and end if he does not win Florida or Ohio, talking about President Trump right here. Let's say Pennsylvania does go to Joe Biden. And let's say Joe Biden does carry Michigan. Well, you're very low on options because this would do it for Biden. This would do it for Biden. A lot of things would do it for Biden. But what you could have, we're talking about North Carolina here, a close race. Give it to Trump for the sake of this argument. Give this to Donald Trump. Get him to 257. Get him to 268 here with a surprise win in Arizona, a state the Republicans have tended to carry. And then he could win Nevada. Unlikely, but that would give the 270. Or if it went blue, you have the 268, 268, and you could have the one Nebraska district, the one Maine district deciding this election. Maine district, 1 or 2 points in favor of Biden. Nebraska district, currently 2 or 3 points in favor of Biden. A lot of these would be upsets according to the polls, but there is a path, a very narrow one, for Donald Trump if he cannot carry Pennsylvania and Michigan the way he did in 2016. He could still get the 270 with a combination of really sweeping the South, getting a surprise win in Arizona, and then getting an important win in Wisconsin. But Wisconsin, like Michigan, 8 to 10 points, 8 to 10 points. Maybe a random poll has Trump down 1 or 2, but a lot of these not looking good for current President Donald Trump. We will count the votes as we always do. It'll be an exciting night, but those are the paths to victory for Donald Trump and Joe Biden.